All right, Deuteronomy 6, let's call this one the Shema and subtitle it diligently, because both of those terms, whether in Hebrew or English, are really going to come up in this chapter, which talks about the Shema, a famous prayer in Israel that is also quoted in the New Testament by Jesus in various forms within the Gospels. And it's going to start roughly at verse 4, where it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children," and it'll go on from there. The difference here is in the term diligently. See, we've heard before that they needed to not only be hearers, but doers of the word, and they also need to learn them. The learning adds to what we've heard before in the sense that, of course, you have to put some time into the learning. But now we're learning they need to be diligent enough to do all those things so that they can effectively teach their children these things. And if you have ever taught a thing, you might have had that feeling that I thought I knew it at a certain level, but I might not have ever learned what I didn't know when I was just learning and not preparing to teach. And so that's what's happening. They're leveling up and saying you need to be diligent about this and diligent enough to teach it effectively to your youngins. And it's happening not only in the present tense where he's saying here, it's also talking about a future time when you enter the land. And he's going to say you're going to need to remember two things, one personally for yourself, and then again for your kids. First of all, two things he's going to tell them to remember for themselves. One, don't forget who brung you here. We've heard that over and over again in the sense of idolatry, not being tempted to stray after other things. Why? Because when they enter the land, the people are going to look like they're doing relatively well. Remember the spies back in Numbers 14. They brought a great report back about how the land was great and the people and the cities were in some ways intimidating. And so it's possible they could be tempted to look at the affluence and want to just kind of blend in with the kinds of things that have made the people who are already there successful. He's going to say, remember who brought you here, not the impressive sights that you're going to see when you get there. Beyond that, he's going to say, remember not to tempt the one who brought you here by putting him to the test. Once again, they put the Lord God to test 10 times in the wilderness, and that caused the previous generation their opportunity to actually reach the land in which this generation is going to go. But look at it like this. A few Super Bowls back, the Seattle Seahawks made a famous error in refusing to hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch, a very famous running back, when they could have won the Super Bowl 2 or 3, I don't remember how many yards away from the end zone. Instead, they chose to throw the ball. And in terms of percentages, running the ball, especially with a back as gifted as Marshawn Lynch, was a high percentage play for winning that Super Bowl. Throwing the ball in that tight of space was a low percentage play. But understand how in life sometimes we can be tempted to overthink the process and trade in high percentage plays for low percentage plays. The Golden State Warriors stated like this: we hunt the best shot on the floor, meaning even when we can get a good percentage chance of success, we don't settle for good. We hunt the best percentage chance that we can find. And that is what God is saying. He said, don't overthink it, looking at what you see in the trappings of prosperity. Understand what has gotten you to this point and ride out the high percentage. And as he's ending up this chapter, it's going to say it's because there's going to come a time when your kids are going to ask, why are we doing this? And beyond simply teaching them the law, you can give them a purpose statement. Because at the very beginning of the chapter in verse 2 and at the end, he's going to say, this is so that you can have longevity in the place where I'm bringing you. And it's not just here. God's going to remind us of this when the Hebrew writer says in Hebrews 11:6, the one who comes to God must believe that he is, and he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, the New King James is going to say. And while there are some low percentage opportunities that might pay out well, there are other low percentage opportunities that are never a good choice. And in terms of following God, it's never a good idea to follow him casually. Because as we mentioned before in a lesson entitled Water, in trading a diligent pursuit of God for a casual one, often what we'll find ourselves doing is watering down the wisdom he's giving us to deal with the drama in this life. But even worse, as we mentioned before, watering down the wisdom we need to fit in an eternity that's drama-free.